300,000 Zimbabweans spoke. Parliament is hiding what they said. Oh, Zimbabwe, 300,000, 300,000. That is how many Zimbabweans submitted their views on the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3. The bill that removes your right to directly elect your president. The bill that extends Mnangagwa's term without an election. The bill that the Law Society says is unconstitutional. The bill that the Catholic bishops called an assault on democracy. The bill that workers' unions, lawyers, civil society, churches, and ordinary citizens have been fighting for 90 days. 300,000 submissions, the biggest public participation in Zimbabwe's constitutional history. And the parliament has one job right now, one job. Tell the people of Zimbabwe how many of those 300,000 submissions support the bill and how many oppose it. They have not done that job. They will not do that job, will they? And my source, Mure Zimbabwe, who has been inside Zimbabwe's parliamentary processes for over a decade, told me last night exactly why. The answer to that question is so devastating for the government that revealing it would make CAP 3 politically impossible to pass. And politically impossible in Zimbabwe is the one thing power cannot afford to be. This is Mutapa times. And right now, Mure Zimbabwe, we tell you what parliament is hiding. Let me give you the exact quote from the clerk of parliament, Kennedy Chokuda, official on record. He confirmed 300,000 submissions were received. He confirmed the number, he confirmed the process, he said everything was going well. He did not say how many support the bill. He did not say how many oppose it. When journalists asked, silence. When civil society asked, silence. When opposition MPs asked, silence. Now, I want you to think about this very carefully because this silence is not administrative. This is not a data processing delay. This is not bureaucratic caution. In Zimbabwe, when government hears good news, they shout it out from rooftop of parliament buildings. When polls support them, they quote the numbers immediately. When turnout is high at their rallies, they give you the exact figures within hours. 300,000 submissions, and they cannot tell you the breakdown. My source says the reason is simple and brutal. The overwhelming majority of those 300,000 submissions oppose CAP 3. My source says the internal count that parliament has already done, because of course they have already counted, shows a ratio that could embarrass any government claiming democratic legitimacy. I asked for the number. My source paused, then said, let's just say that if parliament releases the breakdown, CAP 3 is dead by morning. Dead, Zimbabwe. That is why the breakdown has not been released. That is why it will not be released before the bill goes back to parliament for its second reading. That is why 300,000 Zimbabweans spoke and their government is pretending the conversation was about something else. Let's talk about the Law Society bombshell. Here is where it gets even more explosive. Because even if parliament ignores the 300,000, even if they bury the submissions, even if they count the village heads and the ZANU-PF structures and the indigenous churches that declared support this week and call it a mandate, there is still a legal problem that cannot be ignored. The Law Society of Zimbabwe, the country's own lawyers, have submitted a formal legal opinion, and that opinion says this: the clauses in CAP 3 that extend presidential and parliamentary terms from 5 to 7 years, clauses 4, 9, and 10, specifically are unconstitutional. Not just problematic, not just controversial, unconstitutional, Zimbabwe. Because Zimbabwe's own constitution, section 328, subsection 7, says clearly that any amendment to term limits cannot apply to the person currently holding that office. Let me translate that out of legal language into Zimbabwe language. You cannot change the rules for the next person. You cannot change the rules for yourself. I mean, you can change the rules for the next person, but you cannot change the rules for yourself while you are already playing the game. That is what the Constitution says. That is what the Law Society is saying. And that means even if CAP 3 passes Parliament, the moment it goes to the Constitutional Court, it faces a legal challenge that my source says is almost impossible to defeat. Almost, unless you have already appointed a Chief Justice who owes a position to the man who needs that challenge to fail. Elizabeth Gwaunza, appointed by Mnangagwa this week, days before the constitutional challenges begin. I am not saying she will rule in his favor. I am saying the architecture is in place. And in Zimbabwe, architecture is never built by accident. Right. Inzwai munzwe muri Zimbabwe. The village heads betrayal. Inzwai munzwe. Now, let me talk about the sabuks, the village heads, because this story broke yesterday and it needs to be understood properly. The Zimbabwe National Village Heads Association came out publicly this week declaring full allegiance to ZANU-PF, supporting CAP 3, backing the constitutional amendment. Now, why would village heads, who are supposed to be apolitical traditional leaders serving their communities, why would they publicly align themselves with a political party and a controversial constitutional amendment? My source says follow the incentive, because CAP 3, buried inside the clauses that everyone is focused on, contains a provision that removes constitutional restrictions barring traditional leaders from participating in partisan politics. Right now, chiefs and villages are constitutionally barred from being political, from campaigning, from declaring party allegiance. CAP 3 removes that bar. And the Sabukusi have done the math. If CAP 3 passes, they get to be politicians. They get to align with the ruling party openly. They get access to the resources, the contracts, the patronage networks that political alignment in Zimbabwe delivers. 300,000 submissions from citizens saying no. And the Sabuks saying yes, because the bill gives them something personal. My source said ZANU-PF did not just consult the public on CAP 3. They spent 3 months quietly building a coalition of people who benefit personally from it passing. Churches, villages, business people with government contracts, party structures. The 300,000 submissions are the voice of Zimbabwe. The coalition is the machinery of Zimbabwe. And in this country, machinery beats voice every single time. I sat with that for a long time. So, what happens when Parliament reconvenes? So, here is what my source says happens next. And I want you to understand this is the most important part of everything I have told you right now. Parliament reconvenes. CAP 3 goes back for its second reading. The Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Justice presents their report on the submissions. The report will not accurately represent what the 300,000 submissions said. It will present a curated summary, a managed narrative, language that makes it appear the consultation process was genuinely divided, that there were significant voices on both sides, that Parliament is acting on the will of the people. It will be a document designed to give legal and procedural cover to an outcome that was decided before the consultation even began. Then the bill goes to a vote. And here my source said something that stopped me cold. They said, the vote is not the danger. The vote will pass. ZANU-PF has the numbers. Everyone knows this. I said, so what is the danger? They said, the danger is what happens in the streets on the day the vote passes. Because 300,000 people submitted their views. And when those people see that their views meant nothing, some of them will want to do something about it. I said, like what happened in 2018, in 2019, they said worse. Because in 2018 and 2019, people were fighting an election result. This time, they will be fighting the removal of their right to have an election at all. Kubigwa. Kunokonzi kwanzi vanhu vabigwa mavotes. Kugoita kunzi kwanzi vanhu havachatendegwi kuvhota. Ndo zviri kuitika pana. This is worse. It's not like tabirigwa zvedu muna 2018 but hamuna 2023 tonovhota futi togona kuuya. No, it's like hamuchatovhoti. It's not like hamuchavhoti but hamuchatovhoti. Ndo zviri kutotaurwa panapa. So my source said, why do you think Mnangagwa went to Belarus? And the line went dead. Right. Zimbabwe, 300,000 of you spoke. You wrote letters, you sent emails, you walked to a parliament building, you stood in queues, you risked harassment and intimidation, and in some cases, physical violence, just to say your government, we do not want this. You just wanted to say to your government, you do not want this. 300,000 voices. And right now, your government is sitting on the count, hiding the numbers, building the machinery to pass a bill that takes away your most fundamental democratic right, the right to choose your own president directly. This is not just politics. This is your future. The future of every Zimbabwean child who will grow up in a country where the president is chosen by members of parliament. MPs who themselves were elected in processes that SADC and the European Union both said were deeply flawed. That is Zimbabwe CAB 3 bills. This is the Zimbabwe CAB 3 bills. A Zimbabwe where the people are consulted but never heard, where 300,000 submissions disappear into a parliamentary committee room and come out as a report that says something completely different, where a man calls himself a king and his government hides the evidence that his subjects said no. Pano pamzinda wevanhu, we will not hide that evidence. Share this video right now. Every Zimbabwean in your phone, everyone in the diaspora who still cares about the country they left, everyone back home who is wondering if their submission made any difference, everyone who are munomnyika akachi submit. Well, it made a difference. We will make sure of that. Pano pamzinda wevanhu, 300,000 voices. We heard every single one. Zimbabwe, do not stop talking now. Thank you for watching. Peace.